A good morning for those in Kiev and good afternoon for those in India and elsewhere. So we start today our small roundtable on less known facts of history of both our countries, that is Ukraine and India in the first place. India means we will be talking about the Indian subcontinent and not necessarily the territorial limits of India as it exists today. So I have very respected speakers. Dr. Olesia Isayuk, she is representing the National Memorial Museum, a very famous institution, Lonskoho Prison, which is located in Lviv, and Center for Research on Liberation Movement, which is a very professional center, which provides us with a lot of data that is not available otherwise a few decades ago. And we have also Nidchar Mukherjee, who's a young professor, who's head of the department and assistant professor of political science in Berhampur College, Murshidabad, in the state of West Bengal, India. He will reflect on primarily Netaji Subhash Bose's legacy. And we have Olga Voroshbit-Morgunuk. She's the deputy editor of Ukrainian Week, a very famous Ukrainian weekly journal. And she's also a political scientist. And last but not the least, we have a very important person, Maria Tomak. She's not only a very famous journalist, but she's a human rights award winner, and she's a she's a civil activist and also a public figure. She has had a lot of her lot of dimensions. She has worked in state level, in a very high level of the state, and also in the civil society. And she's the only person in Ukraine who has written an article back in 2013, it's a long time ago, reflecting on the issues related to Netaji Bose's disappearance. And she interviewed also, she had a talk with Anuj Dhar, who made a very famous publication. So with that, we would start, and I would like to give the floor to Dr. Olesia Isayuk to reflect on what was happening during the Second World War, because we are, human beings, this time of the year, people celebrate a lot. The Moscow celebrated a parade, and there is a very dominant view that only the Russians, it is being distorted, that they fought against fascism. It was not that. And there had been a lot of nuances, especially with East European history, and especially about Ukraine. And that is very necessary to hear today. So please, on to you, please.
Thank you. One moment to share my presentation. Mm-hmm. Hey, is my presentation visible? Hey, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll try to present the short history of Ukrainian liberation movement during Second World War, and I would begin from the start of this war. Also, to be honest, the history started 20 years earlier. In 1920, Ukraine had lost own independence, and her territory was divided between four neighbor states. We can see on this map as it seemed. The main part of Ukraine became part of Soviet Union. The next, after south part, Galicia and Volyn became part of interwar Poland, and other parts became parts of Romania and Czechoslovak Republic. And it was no place for independent Ukraine in international reality, which was formed by Versailles system of agreement, which ended First World War. Therefore, next Great War in Europe seemed only chance for Ukraine to restore all independence. And it's rather no special wonder that tactical mainstream of Ukrainian underground national movement was based on possibility of new Great War in Europe. The main expectation from potential Great War was breaking of Russia, what would create potential opportunity to liberate Ukraine and to restore independence. For consequence of this fact was the focus on a country powerful enough to alter the European order through military way. It meant pro-German sympathies and orientation. But main part of political choice, sympathies and antipathies were based on experience of previous generation, and they tried to fight independence, to add independence, and position of potential partner of early in the questions of Russia. The German state, Austria and Germany were enemy of Russian Empire during the First World War. Additionally, these states had opened possibilities for Ukrainians to complete own military units and respected basic rules and rights of Ukrainians. Additionally, Germany became ally of Ukraine for 1918 year. And after all this, pro-German sympathy seemed as continuation of political tradition and method of previous generation. From other hand, Western democracies, Britain and France, were taken as potential allies of Russia. It was a result of situation when British Empire and France understood Russian Empire as only pretendant, only power and source of authority for whole Eastern Europe. And in the same time, both.
Yeah, excuse me. Your presentation, only the first slide. Are you rolling your presentation, or are you changing your slides because we don't see it? Only the first slide is.
Do you and you sorry, no, see, sorry, oops, yes. Sorry,
because we are seeing only the first slide, we do not see if you are rolling the presentation.
Sorry. Just I'll try once more.
Maybe you do it the presentation mode.
And now?
Now we see the first one, but can you scroll and can you go to the second slide? So that is third slide, Can you go to the third one? Because if you have to manually change, because it is not, it's not changing.
Чи могли б прокручувати слайди? Просто лише на першому слайді воно стоїть. Можливо, на
Так. Я пам'ятаю. I remember that I am with the first slide.
Okay, yeah, it is coming. Yeah. Okay, so you will scroll. Okay, fine. Sorry.
I'll demonstrate slides when I will speak about problems.
Okay, speak about it. Thank you.
Yes,
okay.
Please.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay.
Hey. And after war ended, these great states, British Empire and France, formed a system of international relations which totally excluded existence of independent Ukraine. And this painful experience was supplemented by the situation where international community of Western society didn't react to information about Holodomor in 1933. Except of its new generation played the main role in Ukrainian movement in the end of 30s. And they were children of war, who were witnesses of defeat of Ukrainian state and triumph of other armies on the battlefield. You can see on my slide photos of toddler, and this sympathetic toddler is future Ukrainian Insurgent Army head commander Roman Shuhevich. And you can read a short list of his experience as a child and teenager. He rose as a witness of great history and Ukrainian national dramas. And he wasn't an exceptional case. This was a standard scenario of whole generation. Roman and thousands of his generation. Okay, and this future in underground members and insurgents remember that Ukraine fought for own freedom without allies, and great states helped Russia, the essential enemy of Ukrainian independence. Of course, and they grounded their own political philosophy and tactics on this painful experience. After it, they placed main accent on military preparations and preferred to see not to see allies, but powers whose walls are aimed into breaking of vassal system and rush of Russia. In the former perspective, we are obliged to accept David Svoboda's thought that characters of own ideology and tactics were based on specific, deeply traumatic experience more than on popularity of right-wing ideologies. Okay, and the next. Between Third Reich and Soviet Union. Oops. I'm sorry for one photo of this too. Okay, in 1939, Second World War in Europe started. After September campaign, what ended with complete defeat of Poland and division of their territories between two totalitarian regimes, Nazi and Soviet. Western Ukraine found itself inside of Soviet Union boundaries. A great part of organization of Ukrainian nationalist members went to Krakow. In February 1941 had broken into two parts, called after leaders' surnames, Banderites and Melnitz. Banderites has led by Stepan Bandera, and it was Bandera's start as leader of Ukrainian underground movement. Bandera and his allies decided that time of uprising for freedom against Soviet Union is near, and began preparation for it. From spring 1940, they trained special groups which were sent later through German-Soviet boundaries. Their task was to organize and to train underground members in Ukraine. But it was clear that future uprising and maybe war for independence will need persons with professional military training and capacities. Or it was possible to take only from Germany. Occasionally, Germany began preparation for attack on Soviet Union in December 1940. After continuous negotiations, both sides owned Banderites, leaders, and German military, not Nazi party authorities signed an agreement about training of two units of volunteers. These units were called Battalion Nachtigall and Roland. Nachtigall means nightingale in English. And after legend, the battalion had this name for because Ukrainians, soldiers and officers of Nachtigall liked to sing as nightingales. Well, and their training ended at 20th June 1941, and in today's 22nd June, they went to battle as part of invasion troops of German army. After all Banderas plans, yes, sorry, we can see Battalion Nachtigall on march, and Battalion Nachtigall in Belarus in the latest period of final period of this war story. Okay, and the next stage of us. After all we plans, Nachtigall and Roland might be transformed into skeleton of future national army. But the state didn't exist. And in the same time when battalions trained, Bandera and his colleagues prepared a renovation of Ukrainian statehood. They established Ukrainian National Committee in May 1941. It consisted of representatives of all Ukrainian political parties and groups, except of own Melnik's wing and state center of Ukrainian People Republic in exile. This committee, Ukrainian National Committee, played a role of Constitution Committee and was endorsed an idea of proclamation of Ukrainian statehood in the name of all Ukrainian people. To proclaim renovation of independence, own Banderitas was formed special march group under leadership of Yaroslav Stetso. This is post-war photos of Stetso in the company with Taiwan leader Chiang Kai-shek. Afterwards, Stetso will become leader of international anti-communists and liberates bloc and will be allies around all world. In Asia too. Okay. Banderas were made and one of the leader owned Banderas. The Indian plan foreseen proclaiming in Kiev, but it was leaving unknown which will be reaction of Germany. Finally, Stetso's march group after decided to use deep window of opportunity when Soviet authority was out and Nazi authority was totally new in the region, and to proclaim renovation of Ukrainian statehood in Lviv. The main goal was to create new political and law threat and to confront Germans with the existence of Ukrainian state. Okay, and the formal act of renovation of Ukrainian state was proclaimed in the evening times on 30th June 1941. In the same time, Ukrainian government was established. Reaction of Germans was negative and rapid and completely sharp. Stepan Bandera was arrested on 30th July, transported to Berlin, and was imprisoned in one of Berlin prisons until January 1942. After it, he was transported to concentration camp Sachsenhausen, and was imprisoned in internal prison of Sachsenhausen, so-called Zellenbau. We can see Bandera's cell. It was a single cell, and Bandera spent here in total isolation from the rest of the world 3 years. 3 years. From January 1942 until autumn, September, after part of witness October 1944. Okay. He could have his freedom back if he withdrew out of renovation of Ukrainian state. But it was impossible for him because the opportunity of something similar meant complete destroying all what he fought for. On 9th July, Ukrainian government was violently dispersed by Germans, and part of ministers of this government were imprisoned in Sachsenhausen too. In September 1942, mass arrests of all Banderas members started, and the whole underground organization transformed into one small aim all for Nazis punishment services, Gestapo, SD, SS, etc., etc., etc. And every cooperation between Nazis and Ukrainian movement became impossible. And it's time to clear some connection between Bandera and UPA and its story about two leaders. Leader charismatic Bandera and leader of managers type Shuhevich. They were colleagues and near workmates, but they were very different persons and were different types of leaders. A Ukrainian liberation movement is usually associated with Stepan Bandera, although he wasn't among UPA organizers and commanders. He left as a symbolic figure. He represented political and charismatic leadership. Born in 1909, as son of priest, he was own member from start of organization existence. Initially, he was leader of own underground net in Kalush region. Later, he became responsible for propaganda, for underground propaganda, and finally, he became leader of nationalist underground net in Alicia region. Under his leadership, they owned the most famous actions. For example, killing of Soviet consul in Lviv as revenge for Holodomor, and killing of Polish internal minister Bronislaw Pieratsky. Effects of ministers' killings was mass arrest among nationalists in June and July 1934. The next year's raid trial against Stepan Bandera and company started in Warsaw. Bandera transformed this trial into manifestation. He spoke with judges in Ukrainian language, ignoring official rules, and explained own and organizational motives and logic of action. Finally, he was sentenced to this and made proclamation of sentence with the whole glory to Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. He was 25 years old in this moment. Later, President of Poland used the right of pardon, and sentence was changed to life imprisonment. Next 5 years, Stepan spent in prison St. Ros in central Poland. After Second World War broke, Bandera and his friends were liberated from prisons. In the next year he stood ahead of Bandera's win of own. As we know, Bandera, supported by younger generation of nationalists, postulated as the main ideological and tactical principle around of own power, what meant to leave main decisions after themselves. He was an architect of renovation of Ukrainian state, and he was imprisoned for principle of Ukrainian statehood. And this silent fight and readiness to sacrifice by himself transformed him into symbol of fight for freedoms. And thanks to these circumstances, we know all Ukrainian liberal movement, underground movement during the Second World War and after war as Bandera movement. But real UPA organized was Roman Shuhevich. His underground area started in 1923, when he became underground Ukrainian military organization member. Oh, I'm out of time. So awfully sorry. I'll try to be more.
Yes, if you can squeeze it into some 2-3 minutes more. Yeah.
Yes. In 1925, he killed school curator Stanislav Sobinsky for very active role of him in Polonization of school education, was threatened with Polonization of younger generation. In 1930, Suhevich became military referent of local executive of underground net, and he planned and managed all political killings and actions and other similar actions for 1934 years. In 1934, he was imprisoned in concentration camp Bereza Artusa. In 1937, he earned his freedom back. For the next 2 years, he was owner of prosperous advertising business. Later, he took part in trying to build Ukrainian state in Transcarpathia and was forced to emigrate to Austria, avoiding death from Hungarian army. He stood ahead of Battalion Nachtigall. After proclamation of Act of Restoration of Renovation of Ukrainian State, battalion was reorganized into Police 1 and sent to Belarus. Shuhevich and their soldiers were forced to serve as road wards until December 1942. After it, they rejected to prolong their so-called formal contract. And were arrested. But Shuhevich escaped during transportation to Lviv, and from January 1943 was one of the 8 UPA organizers. He was among underground leaders who took formal decision to start armed fight against Germany. And the first attack of UPA UPA unit against Germany was on 9th February 1943. And we can see one of underground group and scene of insurgent military OS. During the next 2 years, 1943 and 1944, UPA continued fight against Nazi. UPA formed own structure, and this army spread from Volhynia to Galicia. In 1944, Ukrainian liberation started to seek contact with another non-Ukrainian national groups to realize program of common fight against empires. Of course, the first empires which should to be fought was Russian one, but not only. Hey, and we can see international non-Ukrainian members of Ukrainian Insurgent Army. We can see unit and sisters of Uzbeks, citizens of Uzbekistan, Central Asian Republic, and we an Jewish member of Ukrainian underground. It's Dombrowski. His underground name was Leiba, popular Ukrainian Jewish name for Jew. Hey, and in 1944 years, authority changed once more. Nations escaped to West, and the Soviet authorities was back. And these 2 years, 1944 and 1945, were years the highest power of UPA and the biggest battle. VNC, one of most famous commanders, UPA commanders of this period, Miroslav Simčić and Petro Oline. Okay, and the next. Other weapon was propaganda and art. We can see some pictures of underground painter Neil Hasevich, and we can read a short bio of his short biography. And once more, pictures from UPA everyday life. And UPA fight continued until end of 40s years. It became clear that UPA unfortunately has no chances to victory over Soviet Union. Main number of UPA soldiers and officers were dead, and we can see throughout last rages, head commander, UPA head commander, General Vasilko, and one of insurgent who left in underground for dozens. Ilya operation left in underground, saved by his wife for 40 years. Okay, to be honest, theme of UPA is very spread and very deep, and I'm sorry that I told about only small part of UPA, but when you want to have any information or more photos, etc., you can write to my Gmail, and finally I'll turn on a few seconds of underground anthem.
Oh, this is the song that you want to now play, right? The march song. The
Ви
зараз будете грати цю музику чи ні? Тоді закрийте презентацію і грайте музику, будь ласка.
я зрозуміла A.
Добре.
Just a moment. Oops.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
Once more.
Yeah. Can you now play the music, which is the march song, the marching song of the Ukrainian Rebel Army or Insurgent Army, as it is called in English. UPA is the Ukrainian acronym for this. Yeah, please. We can't hear. Maybe you can send it to us via chat because we cannot hear. Ми не чуємо. Ви можете відправити через чат. Ми нічого не чуємо. Пані Орися, ми не чуємо вас.
Не чуєте?
Ні, ми
Yeah,
нічого.
well, I was silent to give possibility to hear music without
No, you have to
intervening.
you have to unmute your microphone because it is from your computer, but we will not be able to hear probably because if you are playing it on your computer, I don't know.
Sorry.
Can you? Yeah. Can you
Sorry.
try now? Yeah.
Okay, when we have this little problem, I am deeply thank you for attention.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. But maybe you can send the link so that people can play and listen, this song. Можете запис оцей YouTube, чи є лінк, скиньте на чат, просто люди можуть
Okay.
послухати.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will continue our discussions, and please write your questions to Dr. Isayuk here in the chat so that she can answer quietly, and that we do not have, we continue our discussion. So to sum up, she briefly highlighted the situation that was there in Ukraine. Ukraine was divided into, I will sum up your presentation a little bit, that you saw it was divided among different countries. Part of it was in Poland, part of it was in the USSR, and then part of it was even under Czechoslovakia, and part of it was under Romania. So with all these configurations, the Second World War started, may we remind everyone, was by two forces. That was the 1st of September, 1939, when Poland was attacked by Soviet Union and by Nazi Germany, because they had the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, if you remember. That's the non-aggression pact. They had a non-aggression pact which had a secret clause which indicated the sphere of influence to be divided, and the attack point was Poland. And that's the war started. 1st of September, Hitler attacks, and 17th of September, Soviet Union attacks. Yes, so, and the issue is that we are dealing with, Soviet Union existed at the time, but Ukraine was divided. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. I think Dr. Isayuk will be answering you, Professor Anirban Banerjee. We are very happy to see you here. Yes, and I think she will answer you. Please, can you answer Dr. Isayuk in the chat if you don't mind? So, basically, Ukraine was always seeking for independence because it was, if you have the right to self-determination, I mean, the configuration of a state is not what, we are thinking today. So Ukraine was included into Soviet Union, if you remember. There was this huge civil war following the Bolshevik Revolution. And there were a lot of events that followed after that. So it was not that simple that Ukraine didn't exist. It's very easy to say that. Ukraine really existed. Even within the Soviet Union, it was a separate republic. So that being there, and the non-aggression pact, if you remember, included the Baltics. So there was some kind of a division, like a little bit of the Poland and a little bit of the Baltics, and many other places were included by Stalin into the Soviet Union. With the Ukrainian independence movement going underground, the problem started. The problem started that we today have is the problem of interpretation. The problem of interpretation and treatment of this topic. Because the treatment of this topic is highly politically charged, and sometimes it is very much, it is serving the national interests of particular countries. It is not the truth as we historians should look at it, how things really happened, what was the scenario. And of course, the no historical personage or historical persons are like gods. You know, we cannot say that Mr. X or Mrs. Y was a god. So they had their problems, they had their mistakes, they had their tactical thoughts and other things. We will just look at them as they existed in history without making value judgment, because that is where we run into this interpretation. And the interpretation issue I will leave aside, because we have a right to interpret, we have freedom of thought, definitely. But at the same time, we must first look at the facts, what was happening on the ground. And I remember from my experience that our ex-chief minister of West Bengal, none other than Mr. Buddhadev Bhattacharya, who was a very celebrated academic person and himself being a communist, was extremely interested in this history of Ukraine. And through the Indian ambassador, he had asked to find out more facts, and that was back in 2008 and 9. So, you know, intellectuals who are interested in history, they always looked at history from a very professional point of view. Having said that, I will move on to, I think we should start with another person in the Indian page, Indian side of history, is very much misunderstood and even not studied properly. In India, he is studied very well, not like in Ukraine. I mean, Ukrainians are doing this research now. In India, there's plenty of research in many countries of the East, Japan, Taiwan, and other places, in the West, in Germany, Austria, in Britain, and in the US. However, but we still have different interpretations of this person. Not in the Soviet Union. He was not studied in the Soviet Union so much, and so much so that I would like to, ask. Maybe I will ask now Mr. Nijhar Mukherjee to start introducing Subhas Chandra Bose and who was he. So please, Mr. Mukherjee, the floor is yours.
Hello, am I audible? Am I audible?
You are, but little bit maybe better if you sit near the microphone. Yeah.
Yes, so I'm audible, right? Okay. Yes, okay. Actually, there is some problem over here. The volume is rather low on my laptop for some reason. There are some network issues, so please bear with me. Okay, so Dobroho Ranko, Ukraine, Namaskar, India. I would like to start my presentation.
It is difficult to hear you. Yeah, your sound is not really very clear.
Okay, I think I'll log in from my mobile. That will be better.
Yeah.
Hello, is this better? This better?
This is better. This is better.
It's better, sounds good. And let me just mute. Let me just as far as
you are muted.
You
are muted on the screen. You are muted.
Okay, so yes. So Dobroho Ranku, Namaskar from Bangla and in Ukrainian. I tried to wish everyone in both the languages. And I thank Professor Mridula Ghosh, the Indian Dialogues Initiative, and all the authorities in Ukraine for organizing such important mind-deepening webinars, because we live in troubled times where freedom is under attack. Ukrainians are fighting a war of survival, a war of their civilizational values, a war of liberty, something that's very important at this time. And as Indians who faced more than 200 years of colonial rule, I mean, around 200 years of colonial rule by the British, it's very important for Indians to support the Ukrainians a struggle for liberty. As we know, in places across the world, the idea of liberty is under attack, and it is precisely in this locale where we need to know more about our civilizations and more about our historical struggles and find commonalities. When we talk about Indian nationalism and Indian liberation movement, Subhas Chandra Bose is one of the most hallowed yet controversial figures. Now, the great thing is that Subhas Bose was one of the biggest patriots that India has produced, but he was also one of the greatest left-wing leaders and socialists that came out of India. Now, these are contradictions, but it's true. It's true. And then again, someone who shook hands with none other than the Führer Adolf Hitler himself, someone who allied with the Japanese to take on the British, but a leader for whom even the greatest critics had their praises. Nobody in India, whether you like him or dislike him, no one in India can actually deny the fact that Subhas Bose's love for his country and to make the supreme sacrifice was genuine and unlimited. One cannot comprehend, sitting in a free India, what kind of sacrifices Subhas Bose and millions of ordinary Indians, combatants, non-combatants, silent supporters, underground supporters have made for the sake of the INA. Okay, now let me try to get out of emotion and come to the factual part. So this will be introduction of Subhas Bose to a Ukrainian audience, and later on I will go into the academic nuances. So Subhas Chandra Bose was born in 1897 in Cuttack, which is in Odisha in India. He was ethnically a Bengali, and he was a patriot from very young age. His political tutelage was under none other than the great C.R. Das, Chittaranjan Das. Chittaranjan Das is another often forgotten figure of the Indian independence movement. Perhaps we should have another seminar on Chittaranjan Das at some other time. I mean, but whatever. So he was a member of the Swaraj party. Well, basically, the Congress had a divide in the 20s where the British had created certain institutions of government. So there was one group known as the Note Changers who were in favor of boycotting those institutions because the British had made. But then there were the pro-changers who wanted to enter those institutions and forward the struggle from there. Subhas Bose was under the leadership of Chittaranjan Das, was a member of the Swarajists who were the pro-changers, and he later on became the mayor of Calcutta, now Kolkata, my hometown. And then he was an important figure in the politics of that era. Now, within the Congress party, a strong left wing had formed. Within the left wing of the Congress party, there were two important figures. One, as we all know, was Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was the first Prime Minister of India, and he, along with Bose, was a member of the left wing of the Congress party. And on the right wing of the Congress party, we had politicians like Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and others. Now, in the 30s, when war clouds were developing across Europe, Subhas Bose wanted to take advantage of the situation. Now, here comes the complexity of Subhas Bose. Subhas Bose, ideologically, he was a leftist, but he also had admiration for Germans, Italians, and the Japanese, the powers who were actually challenging the British hegemony. Because even though he was ideologically a leftist, for Subhas Bose, Indian independence was the principal contradiction, to use a word from Mao Zedong. For Subhas Bose, the principal contradiction or the primary motive was to attain independence for India. And for that, he had a great strategic debate with Gandhi. For Gandhi, the means is as important as the ends. And for Gandhi, the question of non-violence the question of non-violence and passive resistance, well, he called it satyagraha. There is a difference between satyagraha and passive resistance, which is again topic of a different webinar. But whatever, non-violent satyagraha movement was the way to go, which was a kind of passive resistance. But for Subhash Bose, there was direct action. Unfortunately, here in India, the term direct action is often associated with the Muslim League and communal politics. But the first one to give the cry for direct action was actually Subhas Chandra Bose, and direct action for Indian independence, to make India independent from British rule. Because for Subhas Bose, the prime objective was to free India from the yoke of the British Empire. For that, any price was worth paying, and he actually paid it with his life. Okay, so coming to the next part, in 1938, there was the Haripura session of the Congress. It was in this session that Subhash Bose was elected as the president of the Congress. And what Subhash Bose, as a leftist, he was trying to move Congress in a radical and a leftist direction towards a more militant nationalism, militant left-wing nationalism of direct action. Direct action. Just a minute. I think I've got a question. I'll take this question later, Mr. Anirban. Am I audible, as some people feel that the volume is low? Am I audible, Mridula ma'am?
Yes, you are. You are.
Am I audible?
Probably, yes, you are. You are. Continue. Because you're
Okay,
using
okay,
the
okay, okay,
telephone.
okay. Yes.
It's all
Okay.
right. It's all
And
right.
Mr. Anirban Banerjee, I will take your questions later. Okay. But okay, your question is quite pertinent to what I am speaking at the moment. Basically, Subhas Bose was, see, he was a very intelligent person. Okay. He was a very intelligent person, and he was able to read that geopolitical conflict was happening in Europe, and Europe was actually divided into two camps. One is the Anglo-French camp, and the other one is the Axis camp. And for Britain, the Nazis are the greatest enemies. And for Subhash Bose, enemy of the enemy is my friend. So from an international relations theoretical point of view, we can say that Subhash Bose was a realist. He was a realist, and actually, Subhash Bose is a deeply contested person. I will come to it later. But the one important thing I tell my students, and I would say here also, that the criticisms leveled at Subhas Chandra Bose and the criticisms of realist IR theory overlap to a large extent. But then Subhas Bose's realism is where power politics takes precedence over ideology. This was actually framed by his greater nationalist ideology itself. So when I call Subhas Bose a realist, he was a realist because he was a nationalist, for whom it was Indian independence first. Because ideologically, he was a leftist. A very strong leftist, that is. See, here there are various layers and contradictions. Now, coming to Anirban Banerjee's question, that I don't know whether he could predict exactly whether a world war was coming or not, but he was able to predict that a great conflict was about to happen between Britain and Germany. And cultivating links with the Germans was very important for him in that regard. But as the honorable previous speaker just mentioned, and also Mridula ma'am has been mentioning, that the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. In 1939, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was signed. This basically, from a Stalinist point of view, this basically bought some time for the Soviet Union. From the Subhashist perspective, this basically meant that Soviet Union was not going to fight the Germans for the time being. Okay, I'm not putting any values to it. I'm just saying that from the Subhashist point of view, Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact meant Soviet Russia was not going to fight the Germans for the time being. This gave him a great opportunity because when Subhas Bose took over the reins of the Congress in 1938, he was moving it in the radical left position and a militant nationalist position. In 1939, the very next year, he was actually forced to resign from the post of Congress president. Actually, he had won the election, but due to the objection of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi or Gandhiji, due to the objection of Gandhiji and the huge moral power that Gandhiji actually had over the Congress, Subhas Bose had to resign, even though he was elected as president. So after he resigned, he formed a new party, the Forward Bloc. The Forward Bloc, the name Forward actually came from the old socialist newspaper, Forwards in German, or like Avanti in Italian, you know, like to move ahead, to move forward. And forward basically meant uniting all the progressive forces, the left forces, the radical left forces towards direct action and militant nationalism to oust the British with the help of three main social classes: peasants, workers, students. These three classes. And this was a great unity of all the religions, Hindu, Muslims, and it was to also crush the caste system. So the forward bloc was numerically very small, but it was militant and radical. Well, it is now forward bloc. It is easy to guess that the British clamped down on them and Subhas Bose was placed in house arrest. Now it is 1939. Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is going to be signed. It is in this period that Subhas Bose realizes that, okay, let me take help of the Soviet Union and the Germans. So see, it is at this time, Subhas Bose is taking help of, he's making connections with Germans, he's also making connections with the Soviets. He takes the help of the Soviets. He escapes house arrest. Subhas Bose escapes house arrest. He escapes to Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, he contacts the Soviets. Through the Soviets, he goes to Moscow. But unfortunately, Stalin at that moment is unwilling to frontally help the Indians in the fight against the British, because war clouds are gathering, the Second World War has already started, and while the Russians are not yet at war, they are still not yet at war with the Germans, Subhas Bose has little choice. Stalin also does not offer much help to him. See, Subhas Bose first went to Moscow. Through Afghanistan, he went to the Soviet Union for help. So what Subhas Bose does is, he from Moscow, he goes to Berlin. He goes to Berlin, and in Berlin, he meets the Führer, the fascist, Adolf Hitler. Well, how much this is of practical work is debatable. He did shake hands with the greatest reactionary, the greatest fascist of his time, but he did it for his own purposes. Then, in the Africa campaign, around 2,000 Indian soldiers who were fighting on the British side were taken prisoners. I mean, actually around 15,000 had been taken prisoners. Out of them, around 2,000 were joined the Germans, and the Germans formed an organization called the Indian Legion. The Indian Legion. And then more soldiers joined. The Indian Legion formed of a maximum around 4,500 soldiers. Now, the Indian Legion was more useful for propaganda. Hitler gave Subhas Bose a radio station. From there, he created the Azad Hind Radio. And he used propaganda. And this propaganda, this nationalist propaganda was of great importance. While the Indian Legion was rather insignificant, but then here again comes the complexities of Subhas Bose. The Indian Legion was formed to fight the British. When war broke out between the Nazis and the Soviet Union, the Indian Legion refused to fight the Soviets. The Indian Legion did not fight the Soviets. What Subhas Bose understood is that Hitler, who was too busy on the Western Front, and he was unable to fight and defeat the Soviets fully. And actually, Subhas Bose, I mean, Hitler's invasion of Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa, it was a big disappointment for Subhas Bose, because Subhas Bose was dreaming that the Axis powers with Indian support would actually go down and attack India through Persia, and they would liberate India. He had some sort of a dream like that, but that dream was not to be. So what Subhas Bose did was he shifted base from Germany to Japan. All the way from Germany, he went to Southeast Asia, via Southeast Asia to Far East, that is to Japan. It is on the Far Eastern Front that thousands of Indian origin soldiers of the British Army had surrendered to the Japanese. Over there, he created the INA, the Indian National Army, also known as the Azad Hind Fauj. And Subhas Bose, the Azad Hind Fauj was actually formed by two other revolutionaries, by another revolutionary in exile, Rash Bihari Bose, much earlier. And it was joined by Captain Mohan Singh, a defector from the British Army. I mean, he was imprisoned, whatever. And well, other important members of the ex-members of the British Army, they created the Azad Hind Fauj, which was much larger. And the Azad Hind Fauj, in alliance with the Japanese, they marched, and like 9 pins, they were able to, the Japanese were actually conquering British and other European occupied territories in Southeast Asia. They actually, as far as modern India is concerned, they were able to take control of two parts of modern India. One is the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, the islands which were renamed as Shahid and Swaraj. Swaraj means self-rule, Shahid means martyr. Okay, Swaraj means self-rule and Shahid means martyr. So the Andaman and Nicobar Islands were renamed, and like a provisional and government of Azad Hind or independent India with Subhas Bose as the leader was formed. And also in northeastern India, that is the far eastern stretches of India, in parts of Manipur, they were able to, the Azad Hind Fauj or the Indian National Army was able to unfurl the flag of freedom of Arzi Hukumat Azad Hind. It means our intentions, our sovereignty, independent India. So this slogan of Arzi Hukumat Azad Hind and the flag of independent India was hoisted for a very brief time in Manipur and some parts of Nagaland in East India. Now, again, compared to the Indian Legion, the Indian National Army was much larger, and it had much better armaments and support from the Japanese. But then again, they were completely dependent on the Japanese for help. It was actually a tragic situation, because as we know that the Japanese were not very liberal or democratic as well. They committed a number of atrocities in Southeast Asia and other places. And well, as the Indian National Army was marching, while there is not much record of Indian National Army creating atrocities, but they were unable to prevent much atrocities as well. And also in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, or Swaraj and Shahid Islands, under the Japanese occupation, well, the Japanese said that once the war is over, we will hand over the practical administration of these islands to the provisional government of Azad Hind. But in reality, that didn't happen. In reality, that didn't happen. The war was never over. When the war was over, they were defeated. So basically, in reality, the Azad Hind Fauj had very little, or the provisional government of Azad Hind, they had very little control. They had very little control over the administration of those islands, other than raising some flags and some statutory posts and all. So they were also unable to prevent those atrocities. So then again, when the Japanese were defeated, when the Japanese retreated, well, the INA was also unable to hold on to its positions. They also faced imminent defeat. One after the other, they were defeated in Burma, or what is Myanmar today. The Azad Hind Fauj fought against the British. Again, here there is another ethical principle. There were some Burmese nationalists, some Burmese nationalist freedom fighters who were resisting the Japanese occupation. Azad Hind Fauj did not fight against any freedom fighters of the Burmese or the Myanmaris. So while the Azad Hind Fauj was almost totally dependent on the Japanese, they still used their agency. So then again, here again, the cracks are opening in realist international theory. Does power and realism, does power politics and realism have the final say? Within a yes, there are cracks of no's. If we use Foucauldian analysis, within power, there are resistances. Within dominant narratives, there are cracks. The problem with dominant narratives or meta narratives is they try to paint the world politics or any political situation in blacks and white. But history, or politics for that matter, is more nuanced in shades of gray. It is not so black and white. So a judgment of the INA is also not like that. Okay, so fast forward. The Japanese lose the war. Most of the INA has to surrender. Subhas Bose tries to escape. According to the narrative which has most evidence, he died in a plane crash. He died in a plane crash in what is modern day Taiwan, in Formosa. Formosa was the old name of Taiwan in 1945. But then this story of Subhas Bose dying in a plane crash is contested by many. It is a conspiracy theory that many people believe. But then there are also again some scholars like Anuj Dhar, Purabi Roy, and some others who believe that he survived after that. Then there are some theories which are, I don't know, but which they don't have much empirical evidence, but some people still like to believe that he survived the war and he lived in Soviet Union for a while. Some say he lived in China for a while. I mean, these conspiracy theories are there, but we don't have any concrete evidence. Whatever. Subhas Bose disappears from politics after 1945. But the ghost of Subhas Bose becomes stronger than Subhas Bose himself. Because then again, the Indian Legion members, they try to escape to Switzerland, but the American and French forces capture them. The Azad Hind forces, Indian National Army forces in Southeast Asia, they are captured by the British. Now they are brought to India for trial. They used to be British soldiers. Now they revolted. So the British have every reason to try them for treason. Now, let me rewind. Back in the Congress, Subhas Chandra Bose was against the Gandhian camp. Gandhi was opposed to Subhas Bose. Jawaharlal Nehru, while he was a leftist, he had later sided with Gandhi. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, who was a right-winger. Bhulabhai Desai, who was a right-winger within the Congress. They were against Subhas Bose internally. Subhas Bose was expelled from the Congress. But when the comrades of Subhas Bose were put to trial, these leaders of India, left-wing and right-wing, within the Congress, many of them were also great lawyers by profession, including Pandit Nehru, Bhulabhai Desai, Sardar Patel, among others. They became the lawyers to defend the soldiers of the INA at the Red Fort. At the Red Fort, which is a historical Mughal-built fort in India, the sign of national power, central power. The British used to say that they are the successors of the great Mughals. They would try the traitors, the Gaddars of India, that is the INA, at the Red Fort. But at the Red Fort, the best lawyers of India, left-wing and right-wing, they defended these people. And in many parts of India, there were strikes. when these soldiers were being taken to Delhi to the Red Fort, ordinary people, ordinary villagers, they would block the railways. They would block the railways. They would show solidarity. Three important parties: Congress, Muslim League, Communist Party of India, along with the Forward Bloc, which was still banned. They would bring up in support of Subhas Bose. Now, see, here is the tragedy of history. The CPI made a great mistake, because when Germany invaded Russia or Soviet Union, the Communist Party of India, which used to toe the Moscow line, they made very insulting comments about Subhas Bose. They had called Subhas Bose the running dog of Tojo. That is like the Japanese. They called him the running. They used a very disparaging word such as running dog, such an insulting word they had used. But when the Azad Hind soldiers, they were prisoners in India. It was these communists who had to support them. Then there were other left-wing, there were other communists in India which were outside the ambit of the CPI, who were not controlled by the Moscow lines, like Bolshevik Party of India, BLPI, RSP, Revolutionary Socialist Party, and other left-wing Marxists of the Anushilan Samiti. They would also support the Azad Hind Fauj. Finally, this trial, British wanted to make a grand show of these trials, but this became a grand embarrassment of the empire in the last days. Then, finally, in 1948, the ratings of the Indian Navy revolted. This was a big blow to the British Empire. Now, the dominant narrative is that Gandhian non-violent movement led to the independence of India. Now, there is a lot of truth to it, but there are other truths also. There are other truths as well. Because starting from the INA revolt, something happened which had not happened in the hitherto 170 to 180 year history of British rule in India. Right from the Battle of Plassey, well, I am talking from Murshidabad. This used to be the capital of Bengal before the British came. Around 40 kilometers from where I sit, in the Battle of Plassey, which is actually an orchard of mango trees now. In that Battle of Plassey, the British defeated, with the help of treachery, the last independent Nawab of Bengal. And after that, slowly, the British conquered all of India. The army was always loyal to the British. The British were able to maintain a standing army, a very loyal standing army. Now, when we are academics, while emotion is there, we are not devoid of emotions. None of us are devoid of emotions. Emotions matter, ideology also matters, whether realists accept it or not. But we also have to be objective, and to the extent it is possible to be objective. We have to be fair to all the competing narratives. Now, this is very much true for people like Stepan Bandera, Subhas Bose, and others. We have to look at competing narratives, because history is not black and white. This is why this seminar is important. This webinar is important. The thing is that it is true, whether Indians like to admit it or not, the British Army, the British Indian Army was totally loyal to the British till the 40s. Till the advent of Subhas Chandra Bose, the army was loyal. There was very little sign of revolt within the British Indian Army. And the British Indian Army had fought gallantly. Well, they had fought as servants of the empire, that is, not for any Indian causes. They served the British causes, but they did fight gallantly as servants of the British Empire in the Persian War, in the Afghan wars, in the First World War, in the Second World War, and many other wars. The legend that the sun never set on the British Empire was not only from the money looted from India, it was also from the blood of Indian soldiers. But despite this slavery, this drudgery, the British Indian Army did not revolt before the advent of this one man, Subhas Chandra Bose. This is also correct. This history has to be known. And when the British Indian Army revolted, the British understood that their days were now numbered. See, after the Second World War, the French had plans of continuing colonial rule for a long time in Vietnam, in Indochina. The Dutch had their dreams of continuing a long-term rule in Batavia or Indonesia. But the British understood that no, their days are numbered. Now this happened. Obviously, the role of Gandhi and Satyagraha and the Quit India movement, which happened during the Second World War, that is very much important. But also, the overwhelming support across partisan lines for the prisoners of the Indian National Army. This showed that the army could not be relied upon. In 1946, the naval ratings, the Navy revolted. So Indian guns would not serve as British mercenaries. This message was loud and clear. So, okay, now coming to the political analysis. Subhash Bose, was he a fascist collaborator? Okay, Mridula ma'am, I guess I'm low on time right now.
Yeah, you can continue because someone wants to.
Yes, sorry.
Someone has to leave. Maybe someone has to leave. So maybe we can ask her to say a few words and then you continue, because this is what the topic of whether he was a collaborator is very important. And I want you to talk about this also. So please, I will ask
yes, ma'am.
Ola
Yes, ma'am, definitely. Yes, ma'am, let the honorable speaker speak.
Yeah,
I will speak again and I will answer all the questions.
Because, I wanted to ask
so Anirban and others, don't worry, I will answer all your questions. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much for this part, but I really look forward to continuing your message on the collaboration aspect. Yes, Ola Vorozhby, can you please say in a few words, in maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, if you want to, please?
Yes, thank you. And I'm very sorry that I will have to leave.
Before Olga speaks, I would like to show you a few pieces of information. This is the image of Subhash Bose. And he has told that freedom can never be had by begging. It has to be got by force. Its price is blood. And the other two revolutionaries, Raj Bihari Bose, who joined him in Japan to be a very important leader of the regiment, also their words, and Bagha Jatin, because he was called the tiger, because Jatin Das, he was a revolutionary, he said, we shall die, but the world will awake. So it was a price of life they paid. But what is most important, Olga will be detailing on it. I want to ask you to look at this aspect of gender balance. In those days, there were no women, but Bose's Rani Jhansi regiment was the first one to have women form into a regiment to fight for Indian independence. And this was unique. And also some other photos I'm showing you. This is of all the training of the regiments. And basically it was a big regiment. A lot of women joined. Women gave up their ornaments, gold and luxuries, and they opted for independence. So we salute those women. So please, Olga, you can continue. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, it is always said that war is man's business, but when we see that the stake is the destiny of your country, and you have to defend or to liberate your country, then it's business of all, of both men and women. And we can trace that both in India and in Ukraine. And this was really a tremendous thing when I found out at first we're reading about this Rani Jhansi regiment, and also comparing it to the experience I was reading and earlier in Ukraine. So Ukrainian women fighting during the First World War, and then taking active role in the Ukrainian Insurgent Army in UPA. And actually, I would like to talk about more personal side of this involvement of women into the battle for their countries. So I will show you one photo because Dr. Gore showed the photos of Rani Jhansi Regiment, and I will show you the photo of one woman, and she was. Do you see it?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we see.
So her name is Katerina Zaritska, and this woman played a very important role in the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. She was one of the women who were Zvyazkova. This is the Ukrainian name. We can say that this is an assistant to the leader of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, Roman Shухevich. And then I will show you the other picture, and then we'll explain why. Here you can see another woman. Her name is Olena Stepanev, and she fought as a part of Ukraine regiment during the First World War, and then she was also she was a platoon commander in the Ukrainian Galician Army, so the army of West Ukraine People's Republic, a republic that existed for half a year in eastern Galicia. So here where I live. Or nowadays western part of Ukraine. So why both of them are so important? Actually, Olena Stepanev was a teacher of Katerina Zaritska at school, and both of them believed in independent and prosperous Ukraine. And while Katerina Zaritska was still studying in gymnasia, so Olena Stepanev, who inspired her not only to study, to be intellectual, but also to train herself. So they were going on over the river and were training so to be physically fit. And then Katerina Zaritska, she joins the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. And what is important is the destiny of these women who choose to fight for their country, but at the same time they choose to be mothers. So she meets her. Yes, history is not black and white here. So she met her husband while being detained. Then when they go being detained by the Soviets, if I'm not mistaken, when they get out, they decide to marry. And then she once more is detained and gives birth to her son while being in jail. Actually, she was able to become free only in 1972. So since the end of 30s, she was more in jail than free. Her son was raised by her parents, and this destiny of women who, from the one side, they choose, and she was a very important person in assisting Roman Shухevich, who choose to fight for their country, but at the same time, they also need to be mothers, and the kids they are growing up without the mother's support. And when I was reading about this Rani Jhansi regiment, also about the Captain Lakshmi Sahgal, so it reminded me a lot about those stories, and there were lots of such women as Katerina Zaritska in the Ukrainian Insurgent Army on different positions. These could be just simple women in a village who were transferring messages to the soldiers, insurgent soldiers in the forest, or these could be also women in the cities. and also those women who were who were on plantations, yes, and decided that they also want to defend their country, want to be the part of Azad Hind Force. So this is the other case of showing that the fight for your country is not black and white. And I think this is on what I would like to stop in my short presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Olha Borosbeit, Movyunuk. I'm very, very grateful. And I want to now ask, before I move again to Nitra Mukherjee, who will definitely, we leave that question open about collaboration. I would like Ms. Maria Tomak to explain her take on Subhash Bose, and then we can move on if it is possible. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ghosh. Thank you for the invitation. And also I would like to immediately thank Professor Mukherjee for supporting Ukrainian struggle and for your understanding of Ukrainian context, which in itself is very valuable, given how many Russian propaganda is and how powerful it is in your region, basically, and especially in India. So thank you for that. I will just say a few words, and actually I would like to admit that Professor Mukherjee was interrupted at the most intrigue point, because that's like a forever debate for Ukraine also, whether Bandera was a collaborator or not. But for me, like both of these stories that we're looking at today are about the complicated pathways to freedom and to the release from the colonization. And if in the case of like India, it's acknowledged that that was like a struggle for the liberation from the colonial forces, unfortunately, it's not like that with Ukraine. And it's still, we're struggling to for the world to realize and to acknowledge that Ukraine was fighting for our independence and to get a release from the forces that were just, absolutely catastrophic for the Ukrainian people and people who are living here and who, like many millions, fell victims of these regimes, including, of course, Soviet regimes. And so, like as a person who works with the information and advocacy a lot, I can see here a problem of knowledge, in both of these cases. And in both of these cases, it leaves the space for the manipulations, unfortunately, either they are deliberate or not. And in the case of with UPA that was described by the first speaker, it provides Russia with the opportunity to manipulate and accuse Ukrainians of, being Nazis, And this narrative is so strong, and it started back in 1950s. Historians may correct me, but I guess it started even during Stalin, when Stalin was still alive. And it's so strong that it's utilized till now in order to deprive Ukraine of the international support. So, and when we having seminars like that, it allows us to understand this history, to see it from this angle of the struggle against the colonial forces that Ukraine is still waging. It's the same war essentially that we're having now. And in the case with Subhas Chandra Bose, this lack of knowledge, I can see this root, in Ukraine at least, also in the Soviet propaganda, which was, which found figure of Mahatma Gandhi, which is absolutely like a cult figure in the best way. But they found it probably beneficial for its own propaganda purposes. So therefore it was very much promoted in the Soviet countries, including Ukraine. But again, there was no space to learn more about Subhas Chandra Bose struggle, which of course could remind Ukrainians in particular about our people who were having conversation with various forces during World War II, trying to utilize the opportunity to gain freedom for their people. So this is like interesting part for me, that how these issues play within the political context of like of the current world as well, but also of the previous times. And just to finish, I would like to say about also like this part that we should not forget, and Dr. Mridula has already mentioned the issue of Crimea. And I think because tomorrow we will have another anniversary of the like dramatic anniversary of the deportation of the Crimean Tatar people, 81st anniversary. We should not also forget other nations, other peoples that suffered from the Soviet regime and tried to find escape from this, as Crimean Tatars, for instance. Of course, like it's not, this story is a bit different, right? But in the beginning of the 20th century, Crimean Tatar leaders also were trying to find the ways of also cooperating with emerging Ukrainian state to just get rid of Russian occupation, however it might be called, like Soviet, like Russian Empire, whatever. And unfortunately, in 1944, whilst Crimean Tatar men were actually fighting within the Soviet army against the Hitler army, Crimean Tatar women and kids were deported as Hitler's collaborators, which was absolutely cynical, but absolutely within the Soviet style and current Russian style of Russian propaganda and hypocrisy. So they were deported to Central Asia, and thousands of people died because of hunger, disease, and later it took them 50 years to return from the deportation. And now, unfortunately, so that's would be my last point, is that this history is not over. This history repeats itself, because back in previous century, Ukrainian statehood also did not happen because it was like a geopolitical, all these talks and all that kind of stuff, like in pragmatic interests, whatever. But now, unfortunately, we see that Crimea is being bargaining. Although like Crimean Tatars are the victims of this bargaining, but it's again on this on the table, on the negotiating table, because of all these geopolitical talks. And oftentimes, I think in these discussions, we forget that we're talking about people. It's not just like a piece of land. These are people that remain in the occupation, that are subjected to human rights violations. And it's really very strange that in the 21st century, we have to talk about it and to prove that it's something like worth attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much for revealing so much of, crossing centuries, and you could put it in a few minutes of, it was a real masterpiece to be very brief and at the same time to fill it with information. The Crimea aspect, I think to all listeners, we will be conducting maybe in 2 weeks' time another webinar on the particular issue of deportation. And in fact, it was important to also to add to what Maria has said. The point is that they wanted to Russify Crimea. Like today, everyone is telling, oh, Crimea is Russian. Honestly, I always say if Crimea is Russian, then India is British, because until 1783, it was not a part of Russia. Crimea was not occupied until 1783, which means it coincides with the British coming to India. So this is, of course, I'm telling it in a very, in a way, it is more of a kind of, it is going to be a little bit of extrapolation. But at the same time, that removing who are the Crimean Tatars? The Crimean Tatars are the indigenous people of Crimea. by removing them and replacing them with people from Russia. This was a plan to forget about them, to make Crimea a Russian land, which has started again from 2014, when Russia occupied independent Ukraine's integral part, Crimea. So the history is being repeated, maybe a little less than 100 years. So this is the tragic aspect that the world cannot afford to ignore. So, well, while we say, oh, give up the territories, give up the territories and have a peace with Russia, this is not about territories. This is about people, about the fate of millions of people. So, therefore, I would like Mr. Mukherjee to continue whether Bose was a collaborator, yes or no. And then we can, of course, have the discussion with everyone participating. But please, Mr. Mukherjee, I also have Ms. Monami Nag, who wanted to also speak about Bose. So I hope she's here. And I would like to also give her the floor later, okay? So after you sum up and finish. So you have like, say, 5-7 minutes. Is that okay? Yeah?
Hello. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. You are.
Okay. So basically, this is where the political theory part comes in, and here the various nuances come into play. Because you see, first of all, if I say, was he a collaborator? Now, he can be Bandera, he can be Bose, or it can be anybody. What defines collaborator? How do you define collaborator? Now, this is a $1 million question, It's a $1 million question. But how do you define collaboratorship? So, from that point of view, now, I am not much of an Ukrainian history expert as of now. So, I will not comment on Bandera or Shukhevich because that would not be fair on my side. The question is that a collaborator is usually someone who collaborates or does the same things as the occupying power. Say, for example, a Nazi collaborator would be someone who turns Jews over to the Nazis, or someone who kills homosexuals or Roma people or turns them over to the Nazis, who collaborates in the Nazi scheme of things. Now, then there is another question. A lot of forces were actually allied to the Nazis. And well, one cannot deny, Subhas Bose, and he and his forces were allied to the Axis powers. There is no doubt over this. Okay, they were allied to the Nazis. But does allied with mean the same thing as collaborator? Now, again, this question doesn't have a single answer. It is difficult, it is difficult to understand. Now, I don't have a one-word answer for this. I don't think any good nuanced scholar will have a one-word answer for it. Someone who is answering this in a one-word or a one-sentence answer is either ignorant or a propagandist. Now, it is difficult to deal with propagandists. You can try to engage with ignorant people up to a certain extent. But if you are making such simplifications and doing propaganda, then I guess academics would say, well, you're right. I'm out of this conversation, For an academic, you have to have a nuanced conversation. And in order to have a nuanced conversation, you will have to go through the various aspects of a person. Now, a person is actually made up of several contradictions. There are several aspects. There are several aspects of reality. There are several aspects of contradictions within a person. So a monolinear or a unilinear judgment of a person like Subhas Bose does a lot of disservice to the disciplines of history, political science and international relations. Yes, I say it on record and I say it again and again. An unilinear understanding of Subhas Bose does disservice to academia and social sciences. Context is layered. Now here I would say two things. Now there are some scholars again who do something which I don't support. They say, oh, context is layered. There are many various layers. There are various nuances. And, it's a mix of this and that. And then they say goodbye and they take their leave. Now, I am not someone like that also. Because that again that actually robs us from the responsibility of taking a position. I don't see taking a position or making an evaluative assessment as being antithetical to making blacks and whites. There are no blacks and whites. There are various layers to it. But then we also have to understand the man and try to take positions. We can have our own understanding of the situation. I would say two things over here. First, let's dissect Subhas Bose as a person, his ideology. His ideology was actually everything, or almost, or most of the elements in Subhas Bose. If we take the set of Subhas Bose, the set of variables which are there in the set of Subhas Bose, most of those variables are totally antithetical to the set of Nazism. Subhas Bose was secular. He was non-sectarian. He was anti-racism. He was a very strong supporter of Hindu-Muslim unity. He was totally against communal politics and religious politics. He was a forward-looking progressive person. Now, as scholars such as Zakaria and others have argued, there were certain important signs of fascist collaborator in Subhas Bose as well, such as his penchant for militarism. He would like to parade himself in such a way that he would wear military motifs and military outfits, which many criticized as being of having a fascist set of values. Well, that is true to an extent that his militarism had some sort of a fascistic outlook from the nuances of from the outward appearance of it. Now that is not to be denied totally. Then again, there were some problematic aspects in his political philosophy as well. Well, he said that in India there has to be a 15-year period of dictatorship. A 15-year period of dictatorship, after which his Samyavad, that is his version of Indian socialism, will come. So democracy is important, but democracy will come after some 15 years of dictatorship. Now, so that means he did admire certain aspects of dictatorship. He did admire certain aspects of dictatorship, which is problematic. So while Subhas Bose, he was a mixture of far left ideas and some right wing ideas as well. Okay. So he was an eclectic mix of far left ideas and some right wing ideas, perhaps some far right ideas as well. And he spoke of a kind of dialectics between communism and fascism, which is again problematic, which is again problematic in certain ways. These are some problematic aspects of Bose. But overall, if I want to broadly situate Bose on the political ideological spectrum, there are two things cannot be denied. One, he was overall a leftist, a very strong leftist. He was very much anti-capitalism. He was anti-capitalism. He was anti-British imperialism. He was totally anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism, and he admired the 5-year plan system of Soviet Union and many other parts of Soviet rule as well, or what he called communism. He admired Bolshevism, some aspects of Bolshevism, while he was critical of some other aspects as well. So he had a again contested relationship with the Soviet Union. But then he was overall a leftist. You cannot deny that. But the second thing is that he was an uncompromising champion of total Indian freedom. He was an uncompromising champion of total Indian freedom. Now, coming to my second point. If you want to judge someone's politics, one aspect is you have to study his or her ideological aspect. But then there is another important thing as well. That is, you have to see the priorities. This is something which I try to make. This is a point that I try to make again and again in various places, in various conferences about various figures. Now, this is not something which is exclusive to Subhas Bose. Politics in reality, like real life politics is about choosing priorities. Remember, I took a leaf out of Mao Zedong's book, Principal Contradiction. For Mao Zedong, when you are doing politics, real life politics, at a particular point of time, you have to choose your main enemy. That enemy is your principal contradiction. That political force with whom there is your main opposition. That is your principal contradiction. Now, personally, I am anything but a Maoist. Okay, let me see. None of us are neutral people, and I don't think that neutral political science is possible. But as scholars, we have to maintain certain methodological nuances, but then 100% neutrality is not possible. So let me make myself very clear. I am totally against the politics of dictatorship, be it Maoist or Stalinist or whatever. Okay, I mean, like, I am not a supporter of Marxism, Leninism, Maoism. But then there is an important thing to learn from Mao, that his politics of principal contradiction. Now, if I use that theory of principal contradiction to evaluate Subhas Chandra Bose, Subhas's priority was the anti-British struggle. Now, a person at one point of time, I mean, let us close our eyes for a few minutes or a few seconds at least, and try to think about our own political views. We are a lot of things. We support a lot of things. We oppose a lot of things. Now, in real life politics, whether we are doing politics in India or Ukraine or Palestine or Uganda or Japan, wherever we might be situated, we cannot always find one particular force that unanimously aligns with all our views. And we, on the other side also, it is difficult to find some party which perhaps, for one party or one political force, which is totally against us also. I mean, the latter is often true. We find more perfect enemies, but we don't always find perfect allies. This is a reality of politics. This is a reality of politics that I have noticed in real life by studying history and through my engagement with politics across the world. We do not always find perfect allies. So, but we have our views, we have our value systems. Now, when we are trying to do our politics, then how do I proceed? Now, on the other side, there are other people. How do we judge friend from foe? How do we judge who is our ally or who is more aligned to our views? Who are more aligned to our views or not aligned to our views? Okay, friend and foe is again a black and white distinction. Perhaps that is not applicable at all points of time. But still, who is nearer to us and who is further from us? How do we judge it? In this, what I will say is the politics of priorities. What politics is a particular actor prioritizing over and above the other? Mao Zedong had put it as identifying the principal contradiction. Now, I am not asking everyone to do a politics of principal contradiction from Maoist point of view. No, like I'm not a Maoist, I'm not a Marxist-Leninist, so not from a Maoist point of view. But what I am saying is that we as political agents, we have our priorities. We have to choose what is a principal contradiction. Okay, Professor Tomac has to leave. I will just have a few seconds of message for Professor Tomac. Thank you so much, Professor Tomac. The thing is that at least there is a lot of Russian propaganda here in India, and that is quite disgusting. Actually, we find people from the far right to the far, some people on the far left, like left wing and right wing, are coming together to support the Russian cause. And in the name of realpolitik and realism, a lot of people see Putin as an ally. Now, I totally question that myth. A lot of people in India are not supporting Ukraine, they support Russia, and some of them are supporters of their far-right trolls and hooligans aligned with the far-right Hindutva right-wing politics on one hand, and there are also, unfortunately, some leftists who are in this group. And there are some also so-called realists who support Professor Mearsheimer, and some so-called post-colonialists who support Russia. But I am not one of them, but many Indians are there who are actually calling out the bluff of Putin. They are realizing slowly, and many say level-headed Indian thinkers and intellectuals, they are criticizing Russia and the blatant aggression in Ukraine. So while Russian propaganda remains strong, many thinking Indians are understanding the fallacy. Like someday I would like to speak on like why the Russian imperialism is antithetical to whatever is known as Indian values, Indian knowledge system or Indian value system. It is also totally antithetical to post-colonialism, because the Russian Empire and Soviet Union, they were colonial powers themselves, and Putin's imagination of Ukraine is basically an imperialistic imagination. So it doesn't go with post-colonialism or other left-wing theories as well. And if one has to actually follow left-wing theory in spirit, then one has to stand by the right of self-determination. So basically invading other countries and imperialism, this is actually a contradiction of core left-wing values, which the Soviet Union had done for over 70 years. So there can be, one can raise a question that whether Soviet Union was a proper left-wing country as well. So from all three ideas, Indian traditionalism to post-colonialism to Marxism, I mean, Soviet imperialism needs to be condemned. I unequivocally condemn it, and I always stand by the people of Ukraine. And again, coming back to Subhas Bose, perhaps if Subhas Bose was born, perhaps if Subhas Bose was born in Ukraine at this time, his contradiction would have been to fight against Russian imperialism. Mridula ma'am, I'm just taking 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Miss Monami Nag is on the rolls, and I want to
yes, 2 minutes.
Hear her, because Tomac will be leaving, and Mrs. Nag asked me specially the floor.
Okay, I'll conclude in 1 minute. 1 minute. Okay,
yes,
so
please,
finally, I will say that to question whether Subhas Bose was a collaborator or not. One, we have to do three things. One, we have to evaluate his ideological profile, where we find he was a leftist. Two, we have to see whether, like a collaborator, did he participate in all those activities which Nazi collaborators did? Like, did he turn an anti-Semite? Did he turn Jews over to the Nazis? Jews, homosexuals, Roma people, and other communists and descendants? The answer is no. And the three is, while he was an ally of the Nazis, his alliance was more of strategy. As I replied to Anirban, that history is not about black and white. See, the Singaporeans mourn the Japanese atrocities, but they pay their respects to the INA. Both can coexist at the same time, because there are multiple faces of reality. There are multiple faces of reality. So thank you. Yes, namaskar and namaste, Professor Tomac. Wish to meet you again, and I conclude my speech. If anyone has questions, I'll be happy to answer again. Thank you.
Yeah, we will not finish right now, but I want Ms. Monami Nag, who has personal perceptions of Subhas Chandra Bose, and I wanted to hear her especially. And of course, we are recording it, so I think my colleagues who have left will also be able to listen to her. Please, Mrs. Nag, you are on your floor, please. Yeah, I'm sorry for the late thing. Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak on our very much revered Subhash Bose. But before that, I would like to pay my respects to all the distinguished speakers, and especially Dr. Nithar Bhattacharya. I mean, he has given us, I mean, at least to a person like me, we are not scholars on Subhash Bose, but his message and his speech, and it's so well thought out. And moreover, the collaborative aspect of Subhash Bose and how it has had a long influence on Indian history, and how it has been an effect, an underlying effect that very few people, very few Indians can ever understand on that. And moreover, the long fight, the war that Ukraine is in, I think we as Indians, we are in a time of turbulence and in a kind of political and armed struggle, and in a very much of a sort of a psychological crisis. And we do understand and empathize with the situation that Ukraine has been going through. And but as I would again like to say that we were not, as Indian individuals, as people who have seen Subhash Bose as a champion of armed struggle, and armed struggle which had happened in India. It was really so enlightening hearing Mr. Nithar Bhattacharya about how the theoretical praxis. Well, I'm not that fluent on the theoretical praxis, but as an individual, as a person who has been running a school as a principal, but I would like to say that the passion that we carry in our hearts for Subhash Bose, it is for the son of the soil who fought, and who not only fought, but who went against all sorts of odds and obstacles to free his motherland. And as we all know, and we all heartily, that the only intention that he had, Subhash Bose was carrying at that time, was a complete freedom, with no treaties or no other any kind of he was not into any kind of I would like to say any kind of treaties that the British would like to offer. And he was not with the Purna Swaraj, and not even with the Congress policies of the agrarian manipulation that was going on with the British regime at that time. All he wanted was complete freedom for all of us, and for that he was rather compelled to leave Congress. He was rather compelled to rebel against his own people, which is sad and unfortunate. And his struggle should not be taken, as I strongly feel, and many other people would also like, his struggle should, I mean, maybe I might sound partisan, but I don't find any kind of negative attributes to his struggle. The way he tried to free India from the clutches of British. And as we know, and it was also being felt by people like Rabindranath Tagore, who wrote songs like Tomar Ason Shunno Aji Hebid Purno Koro. So the entire Indian nation, the state, was in tune with the idea that Subhash would bring a new tomorrow, a new morning for all of us. And to talk about armed struggle, Subhash Bose So though Subhash Bose can be given the credit of having this the entire armed struggle, but yet we have all the other down, like Shoot Joshen and Bagha Jotin, and then we had Preeti Lata Wadadar, the entire armory raid, that was Chittagong armory raid. And so rather out of desperation, he went for this the house arrest, and then how he escaped from this house arrest, how his nephew drove him long distances from where he took his train, and then he went back to the foreign countries. These have always been discussed so far, but what, as an Indian individual, I would like to stress at this hour of crisis is that his undoubted and his absolute pure need, his cry, his clarion call for the nation, for even today when our government is talking about nations first, this phrase of nation first goes best with Subhash Bose and nobody else. And had it's very unfortunate, had Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi would have supported him after the Haripuri and Tripuri Congress election, where he was unanimously elected as the young president of Congress. Had he got this entire support, then Subhash Bose would have been a different figure and India would have been a different country altogether. We still believe it. And even today, there are so many stories about his death that when I talk about on his birth centenary, I always say that a man like him doesn't have a death centenary. He cannot die. He cannot die. We cannot celebrate any date when Subhash Bose is dead, because his soul, his spirit, his intention of seeing the light of freedom for the country was so intense. It was so very heartfelt and spirited, and that we cannot think of him as a person who is dead. So therefore, there have been stories, there have been songs, Ekbar Biday Dema Gure Ashi, and there have been myths that he would be returning as a saint, he would be returning as some Mahatmas, and there have been a lot of people who've been making money out of that, because this feeling for Subhash Bose, because if you see the larger audience, the larger common man of India, they don't understand what is the politics. They fail to understand the political praxis that have been going through when he was alive, when he was trying to make the country free. All we understand, or all we still feel for this man, that he stood for the freedom of the nation. He stood for all the rights for the nation, and typically, like a socialist, like a Marxist, he believed that we should have all our fundamental rights. So in this wonderful seminar, I would not be able to extend my I won't be able to take much of my time anymore, and I would thank Professor Ghosh for inviting me in this, and please keep me on count, and I would love to be a part of these sort of seminars, and with a better preparation might be for the next time. And thank you for all the distinguished speakers and the questions. I have been enlightened more and more as a person, and I would love to be a part of such an academic and erudite circle. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this intervention. Now, one of the things that I wanted to give it to all of you, which is something of a musical kind of thing, which is, I don't know if this will be possible, but the INA marching song, which we all know that today, needlessly, it is the one of the songs of the regiment of Indian Army. And so I believe I will try to play it. I will try to play it, and let me see if it is shown. Yes. Can you see the screen? And if I play, do you hear the sound? Let me start playing and tell me. Is it playing?
Unfortunately,
playing?
no sound. No sound is hearing.
No sound, no sound. I don't hear.
Is it playing or not?
No
I'm
sound,
sorry.
Dr.
I'm sorry.
Nidima.
Then what I will do is I will just send you by chat. There is something this Zoom has. It doesn't let. Maybe I had to download the file, but I couldn't do it. So I will send you the file via chat so that you can you can hear it when you want to. It's a very nice song, and it is still used. Now, to sum up, is that I would definitely like to say that did we learn something from this? Is that we need to hear each other. There are certain less known pages of history which we need to know and we need to discuss. That's the first thing. And the second is that Subhas Bose's best contribution could be, summarized as that with the non-violence of Mahatma Gandhi, the military doctrine of India, modern India, was based on Subhas Bose's ideas. Starting from the March song, starting from the everything that the Indian Army has, it was based on Subhas Bose. So, as we know, we say it is a non-aligned country, we believe in non-violence, but nevertheless, as you know, the adage goes that if you want peace, you need to prepare for war. And when we say that, India has prepared itself. I mean, it became a nuclear power, nothing short of, the big arsenal of nuclear warheads. And today, we had the war a few days back. We had a terrible situation with Pakistan. And the defense of the country is very important. Looking at Ukraine, you can think a country which gave up its nuclear weapons. It is very important. And so this is also another aspect that a nation needs to defend itself, because as Nidchar Mukherjee has pointed out, it's realism. Yes, it's realism. But I would again say, to set the priorities, we perhaps have to look at not so much Mao Zedong, but to the constructivist perspective or the other liberal perspective, which means that you have to cooperate and live. You cannot allow mutual destruction. You cannot allow mutually assured destruction, which is not possible. So it is like that part of, idea, that mutual coexistence, with which, in fact, the Cold War was whole based on. So when we base the Cold War on this kind of a principle, and it ended sort of peacefully because it never turned into a hot war. Today's world, we are facing very different situation. And so this experience of leaders who provided some kind of a armed resistance to forces which they could not ultimately fulfill, still then we have to prepare ourselves for defending, and with the ideas and with a lot of carefulness, definitely. Yes, I have Olga Vorozhbit. I thought you left because you said you will leave. So yes, please, you have your hand raised, please. You want to comment, please? Yeah.
If I may, really shortly, because we were speaking about these comparisons a lot, and I reminded myself that Oles Babi, so the author of the lyrics of this hymn anthem of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, he also met Rabindranath Tagore while he was in Prague. And I know that you know, but
I wrote about it, and he was the first translator of Rabindranath Tagore's poetry book, which is the Gardener. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is not just coincidence that we have such a beautiful anthem, and lyrics of this anthem here,
Yeah.
and that he visited. And I just opened the book. I was listening just because I could not be the active member of
Okay,
the
it's okay.
discussion, but I was listening to everything. And
Okay.
I just got the book where I have his articles, and
Yeah.
just wanted to do this mention.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, in one of the revelations, I even have the book of Babi, you know, the original book, and but it was criticized by certain literary critics. But it was the first translation. The first doesn't mean always the best, but it was an attempt in 1919, 1918. He prepared the manuscript, and it was a very good work at that point. And he perhaps was one of those people who didn't meet really, but he was part of the lecture of Rabindranath Tagore in Prague when he listened to Rabindranath Tagore in the Charles University when he spoke. It was during those years when he went to Prague. Okay, so any questions from the audience? We've been quite, for a long time. If anyone wants to ask, comment something or question, ask, please. You're most welcome.
Dr. Mridula, can I ask whether it's appropriate now to tell about Georgy Meshcheryakov, about the Dr. Olena's project? Because
Yeah, we will discuss it. We will talk about it. Yes, I wanted to have a discussion on it, but we haven't decided on the date. So
okay.
yes, we can say about it. So there is a proposal that there was one Ukrainian scientist from Odessa, Mr. Yuri Meshcheryakov, who led the delegation from USSR. He was a UNESCO delegation to set up the IIT Mumbai. That was in 1955. It was a long time back, 55, 56, or even 59, it was late. 59. Yeah, it was later because 58 was the first delegation, 59. So after that, and we all know, and I will be probably having people from the Mumbai IIT, and in one of our sessions, we will discuss this, but that might happen a little later because we don't have a date yet, Do you want to say anything more? Because we will keep all of you informed because you have already shared your emails. Those who haven't, please check our Facebook page or our website, and there will be announcements, so you can get hold of that. But we want to continue on this. Yes, Dr. Phil, Yulia, if you want to just say something, then please mention if I have missed anything about Sherikov.
If we will have the separate meeting on it, then I guess no need. I have something to add, but leave it to the
you can add now because we will not be getting this audience anymore within a week or so. Yes, please. If you want to add.
I just wanted to add that the personality of Georgy Meshcheryakov, who was the scientist in technology. Yeah, he was the scientist in technology in Odessa Polytechnic Institute. And besides, he established the IIT Mumbai. He also trained personnel. He trained engineers in India during his second mission in India during the 1964-1967. And also he was responsible for the opening of the 6 more technical institutes in India. So this story of Meshcheryakov is very important for Ukraine now because it ruins the myth about Russia as the only successor of the Soviet Union. It is the example how Ukrainian actually person from the Ukrainian Soviet Republic contributed massively to Indian technological development then.
Yes.
Yeah. So I hope we will elaborate on this story more later, but the last thing I wanted to mention that the grandson of Georgy Mishcherakov, also Georgy. He kind of researched the heritage, the legacy of his grandfather, and he already gathered a big archive of very valuable photos documenting the establishment of IIT Mumbai, documenting the life of India at that time. And we have a plans. Dr. Olena Burdilovska has the plans, and we all Indologists here in Ukraine want to create the exhibition of these pictures in India, in IIT Mumbai, or maybe somewhere else, for example, in the Mumbai Honored Council there.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Phil. This was an important announcement of a different event on a different topic, as you have understood. So we will keep you posted on this. And of course, after Dr. Burdilovska she's on leave, because I invited her to come to this one and we wanted to discuss this topic a little bit at least, But anyway, we will put it off till next time. And I would like to definitely thank the panelists. Two of them have left, but the main ones are with us. That is Dr. Orysia Dmitrievna, the Olesia Isayuk. I'm sorry, I'm mentioning this name. So, and Mr. Nichar Mukherjee. So both of you, my thanks. We couldn't manage time so much, but anyway, the discussion was important, I believe, for people who attended. And we will have discussions on this to Ms. Monami Nag, my thanks. And we will discuss a lot of other topics. So we will keep you posted. And if you need to write anything, write anything to us, for example, to the Institute, please use this email. I'm writing in the chat, please copy it so that if you want to write anything to us or you want to share your email so that we send you all our announcements, different announcements within the scope of the project we are running. So thank you once again. If anyone has anything to mention, if not, then I thank everyone for the very important contribution. And so we meet next time. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day.